I can barely hear it though. It's weird. No, Leon, I'm not hosting a jazz listening session. I'm waiting for David to come. He wants to put me in place, I think. Here's a thought. I think we need to start putting flat earthers and creationists in the same box. Discuss. Hi, Tiffany. I've given this a lot of thought. At first I thought, no, that it's at different levels of... Oh, here we go. Someone's trying to get in. Hi.
Hello. Hey.
You're a little quiet.
All right. Let me.
Maybe that's me. Let me crank you up here. Let me. Now, I hope you're David. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Okay, let me get you in here. How did church go tonight?
It's good, man. We have our little services. They're a little bit intimate for our guys here at the center I work at, drug and rehab center here. So it's always a good time, man.
So you help people who have been addicted or are addicted?
Yeah, that's correct. I work at a ministry. I guess I don't know if I should say the name. I guess it doesn't really matter. Teen Challenge. I don't know if you've heard of it. But we help people who struggle with any sort of life-controlling addictions, and mostly that's alcohol abuse or drug abuse. And I am the program manager here. I also went through the program at one point in time. I struggled with addiction myself, so it helped me to overcome that.
So when you help them, like very briefly, what tools do you use to help them? What actually do you do when you do your thing?
Sure. Well, we are a faith-based ministry, so everything that we teach here is taught from a biblical perspective. We do teach about the mercy of Jesus Christ and that the stripes he bore on his back were for our healing. And so that's more than just a physical healing. It's a healing of the mind. It's a healing of the soul. It's a healing of even the spirit, a regenerated spirit. It's a healing physically. And addiction really is the way that we perceive it. I guess you could say the fruit of a spiritual problem. And so we attack the root of that problem itself. And we do that through the Word of God. So it is very biblical in its nature, very faith-centered, Christ-centered. But of course, there's a lot of practicality too. We do teach hygiene, relationships, dealing with emotions, anger, things like that. We work hard, we play hard, and teach people just how to be respectable men. Ours is a men's center in society.
So you've been clean for how long?
So I've been clean since 2013. Well, I guess you could say 2012 is when I entered the program. 2013 is when I completed the program. So October 11th, 2012 was the day that I walked through the doors of Teen Challenge. And I haven't touched a single substance since then.
May I ask which substances you were addicted to?
Sure. Just about everything, man. At 16, I started using ecstasy. I wasn't a gateway drug user. I just jumped right in. From there to about 25, I did anything from cocaine I was addicted to for a while. Meth is what ended up taking me out, so to speak. GHB, which is essentially the liquid form of the date rape drug, and painkillers, hydrocodones, psychedelics, mushrooms. I just dabbled in a little bit of everything. So I was hitting the ground pretty hard there.
Did you what pushed you to make this step to go to this what is it called? Teen
Challenge
Teen Challenge
is what it. Yeah.
So did you almost die or hit rock bottom, or what caused you to?
I had what people call a rock bottom experience. Um, so throughout that time of addiction, uh, as you can imagine, burned just about every bridge that I had, relationally speaking. At that point, I was at 25. I was homeless. I was walking the streets of Texas, man, with nothing but a laptop in my backpack that I carried around and used pretty much for a whole bunch of illegal things. And it just got me nowhere, man. I was picking up cigarettes off the street, trying to just get a little bit of a high if I could. I was stealing things. I picked up 2 felonies along the way. I had a daughter. I was not a father in her life. She was 4 when I entered into Teen Challenge, and I was just a deadbeat dad, man. I was not a good guy, and eventually got to the point where I just got tired of fighting. And so one day when I was approaching a bridge in Arlington, Texas, I was just walking aimlessly, nowhere really. And I thought to myself that I was just going to go ahead and jump off the bridge and end my life. And so it was actually in that moment that that something inside of me, which I think was God speaking to me, said, just keep going. And at that moment, it was like a moment of clarity in the middle of a very foggy day. I could see clearly for just 1 second, and for one moment I had hope, and I didn't really have anything to have hope for. I had ruined my life, but it kept me going, man. I got to the other side of that bridge. Got to a McDonald's actually, and reached out to my mom after having been estranged for about 9 months, and she had been looking for me. And
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up your mom, because while you're telling your story, I'm thinking, where are your parents through all this?
Man, my mom had been looking for me for months and months. In fact, I've since deleted my Facebook page. I don't have one now, but back when I did have one, and I ended up looking at it, I went through and I read all the messages that she had been sending me in hopes that I might see and respond. And very emotional reading that, because I realized how much pain I put my mom through. But I had not spoken to my family for about 9 months. Nobody had seen from me. Nobody had heard from me. My addiction pushed me to really cause me to want to isolate myself.
May I ask where your dad was through all this?
He was everywhere. He was, gosh, I don't even know where he was at this time. My father was, I don't know where he was. I think he might have been in New Mexico at the time. But so we never really had a strong relationship.
Your mom and dad weren't together then?
No.
Okay.
No, my parents divorced each other twice, actually, and they went on to marry other people and divorce those people. So I didn't really have a stable family system growing up.
So it's a safe assumption then that the divorce, how old were you when they got divorced the second time or first time?
Second time, I want to say I was maybe 5 or 6, something like that.
Oh, wow. Really young. Okay.
Very young.
Looking back, do you see that as maybe the impetus, the trigger for all that happened in your life in your teens?
Sure. Yeah, I could say that there was certainly some anger that evolved from what I had to witness. I was the oldest of 3, so I did bear the brunt of that, I feel like. And yeah, so naturally there was some anger, some animosity, especially when, father would use the kids against mother, mother would use the kids against father. It certainly created a volatile atmosphere. And naturally, as children, we just harbor those things, and I didn't really have anything to turn to. So yeah, it definitely built up inside of me, and I imagine that at the ripe age of 15 to 16 is why I ended up taking ecstasy, because it did allow me to escape what I was feeling inside, and in a very effective way.
So when I hear very powerful testimonies like this, the question that immediately pops into my head is, let's imagine a David who is a Hindu or a Muslim and
Hmm.
has a very similar story, and has a good ending too. It seems like you're in a much better place now. And then I ask this individual, well, how'd you get out of it? Well, Allah, he pulled me out of it.
Hmm.
Or Vishnu, or Scientology, or you name it.
Right.
And they are better. They are pulled out of it. They're clean for as long as you've been clean, and they say this is testimony that whatever it is, Scientology or Islam, is true. Its testimony is true, David, because look at me, look at my life. I'm better now. I
Hmm.
almost killed myself, but I didn't because of Scientology or because of Allah. How do you see that, view that, what I just said?
Well, I certainly can't deny that there are many means for people um, to take in order to better their lives. And that's great. There's, like you said, many religions out there that have helped people, and there are many people in different religions that do good things. And there are many atheists and agnostics that do good things. They do moral things. And that's great. There are many secular therapists that have helped people get through deep traumas that they've experienced. In fact, it's something I hope to do someday is further my education and to get into more deeper therapy to help children. Man, I love kids, and I hate the fact that innocents are
But would you say that?
constantly.
But would you say that that is evidence for the veracity, the truth?
Sure. So here, and that's the point. So it is what I believe a partial evidence. It isn't a complete evidence. I can't say, okay, I was this way, now I'm this way. That has to be God. Because I've already acknowledged that there are certainly many other means to get from point A to point B. And that's great. If whatever method you took got you there, that's cool. But that's not the end for me. Simply saying, okay, now my life is better. That's not everything there is to my life now. And so, while I do acknowledge that, all religions have some sort of moral, ethical code, and they all speak of doing good in some way. And generally speaking, people, even conventionally, will come together and say, okay, for the common good, let's do good. And so surrounding yourself with the right people in the right atmosphere at the right time can certainly be beneficial to your getting from a deplorable state to a better state. But and so my answer is, yeah, I do believe that it is certainly testimony of the goodness of God. I would not say
I
reason for God.
Okay. Okay. Well, I don't know exactly where to go from here because I would love to probe that more. Like, what? But I know you also wanted to talk to me about Jeff Durbin, in the
Sure.
comment section. But I guess what would be the reason for your belief in God then, if it's not? Because it sounds like the testimony you just gave me was the reason that got you into it.
Hmm. Well, for a large portion of my life, I grew up in a Baptist church, and I've heard of God. And I guess you could say I did believe that he was there. I guess you could say I believed in a deistic God who was somewhere way out there in the cosmos and spun the world into motion and watched it go off into existence and entropy. And he didn't really want to have anything to do with me personally. So I'd never had a personal experience with God. I think it was that moment on the bridge that kind of invited me into a personal relationship with God. No one just wakes up from 10 years of drug abuse and addiction and decides for themselves, I'm done. It doesn't just happen. You don't get those moments of clarity in the middle of all that chaos. And what happened was not that I stumbled upon some passages of the Bible and that's what saved me. It's that God personally intervened in my life at a moment when I was very much ready to end it. Unless, I guess there is the possibility that I told myself to just keep going. There is that possibility, but man, I attribute that to God.
So
And
why,
since then,
may I ask why you did that? Why did you decide to, it seems like almost immediately attribute it to God versus maybe it was yourself saying, look, I need to make a change and I need to do it now.
sure, I guess in that moment, it was because, and I have to say it this way, it just was a feeling. It was, I can't science it up. I can't prove it empirically. I can't prove it in any other way, only except to say that it was a personal experience with God. And since then, I've had many more like that. And it gets stronger as I continue my walk with God. So, as we do throughout life, we see every time I drop the pen falls, it hits the floor. There must be gravity. I can't see gravity, but I feel its effects. And it's the same way with God. I can't see God, but I certainly know the effects of God when it's present in my life.
Okay, yeah, and I totally get that. I get that the personal experience is very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure you and I would agree. I think we would agree that, for example, we don't believe in certain gods like Vishnu or Ganesh or Hindu gods. We both would probably say, no, these gods are not real. They're figments of people's imaginations. But there's people on this planet who really, really believe that
Right.
these are real. And if I was to ask this person, why do you believe Vishnu is real? Because I feel it. I feel it, Doug and David. I feel it. I just know when I was on meth and I was about to commit suicide, Vishnu spoke to me. I could feel it.
Mm-hmm. Sure. No, I actually watched your video with the before I watched the Jeff Durbin video of the splice testimonies. And it's a good point, man. I see what you're saying. I totally understand where you're coming from on that. But I do believe that people can be passionate about something, but be passionately wrong. And I believe as human beings, we're all made in the image of God with the DNA of God. And so I believe, as the Bible says, that we suppress the truth, that those who begin to experience the decompressing, I guess, of that truth, or they will reach out to what they feel is a God. And, if you can, let's see, how do I want to say this? I guess the environment made it easy for me to attribute it to God where if I was in India, it might be more difficult. I might be more prone to attribute that to Vishnu or Krishna or Kali or any of these other gods that exist out there. But that's not how it was for me. And again, it doesn't make anybody not passionate about what they believe, but I do believe that you can be passionately wrong. And so being children of God, we're all born, I believe, searching for God. And I believe that's why God sent out messengers. I believe that's why God has evangelists to let people know what that truth is when they might be walking in non-truth.
So you were a drug addict. You walked towards God. You're no longer a drug addict. If you were to walk away from God, do you think you would return to being a drug addict?
It's hard to say what I would do. I don't think I would. It would ruin my life. I could use common sense and logic just to say that if I want a good life, I'm not going to do drugs. I've seen the effects of that on my life as it is. And that's what I mean from a physical, as we would think of my life here on earth. It might be good. Great. There's plenty of people out there that live fantastic lives that don't believe in any God, but I'm more concerned about what happens when I pass away, when my final breath is spent. And so that's why I believe in God. It's because it's more than just living a good life on earth.
So, what you just said, I appreciate your honesty, because my theory, my hypothesis is that's the reason most Christians and Muslims believe in a God, or any religion with a hell concept, because I think that's where you're going to, right? With the, you don't want to go to hell if there's a hell, and so if Jesus is the only way to avoid that, then yes, you want to believe in Jesus.
Yeah, that's kind of close to Pascal's wager a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily, it's half true. It's not that I don't want to go to hell. It's that I've lived life without God, and I now know what it is like to be with God. And it's not that I want to go to hell. It's that I want to be with God. I'm trying to think of an analogy to say, I can't really think of something off my head, but you understand what I'm saying? There's to me a difference between doing something out of fear of the punishment and doing something because I genuinely love this being that I worship every day.
The carrot appeals to you more than the stick.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand that. Okay, well, did you want to ask me any questions? I can bring up that long comment you made about, I think there was some misunderstanding about what I was actually saying in that Jeff Durbin video, but if you had no questions off the top of your head from that.
Yeah, I guess, so I read you said somewhere along the way when you were a Christian. So I guess I shared my testimony.
Yeah.
What's yours?
Well, it's in my book for 1995. No, I'm kidding. I was born and raised Mennonite, which is a very conservative, can be conservative type of Christianity, very legalistic.
Yes.
But left that church probably when I was 15-ish. Still a born-again Christian, I would consider myself. Ended up going to a Pentecostal church for probably 2-3 years. Got married. Moved to the United States from Canada, went to non-denominational type churches, Calvary Chapel type churches, Presbyterian church. But by in my mid-30s, I started to take an outsider's perspective of my own faith and say, okay, why is it that people just don't see the truth of what I see, and start questioning and doubting. Started listening to people who I previously thought were just, Satan trying to lead me astray. And it took 5 years, and the doubts became to the point where I just said, you know what, I really don't believe this anymore. But I was like you in your early stages of Christianity, where I still had this concept of a deity. First cause is very powerful.
Sure.
And I think a lot of people, besides heaven and hell, believe because of first cause. And so I kind of, it gave me comfort, I think, to believe that there was a creator God out there who maybe just pushed the ball down the mountain, but then after that, the ball just kept going. And I never was like a young earth creationist but I wouldn't say I was a full evolutionist in my early years, but as I went to university, I believed in evolution and so forth. But yeah, I had this deist concept, and then I asked myself, do I even have good reasons to believe in any God, even a creator God, even though it doesn't make sense to me, even though I have these questions, where did we come from? Why is there something rather than nothing? Those are great questions, wonderful questions, but I think to be intellectually honest for myself, I had to say, I cannot fill that crack in my understanding with a deity concept. I basically, it's okay to say, I don't know. It's okay to take that blanket of uncertainty and wrap yourself up with it and feel okay about it. A lot of people can't do that, though. Uncertainty freaks them out.
Sure.
And, but it seems like maybe I just have the personality type where I can deal with it and I can handle it. And so yeah, that's my story. And I'm married. I have a born-again wife, Christian wife. So that's been interesting.
Yeah.
Because I've changed and she didn't.
Okay. All right. So we're unevenly yoked here.
Oh, yes. Are you married?
All right. I am, actually, yes. I'm married. I got married out of Teen Challenge. I have a beautiful baby boy, Judah, 1-year-old son, and I've got another son on the way, actually. So life is good, man, getting better every day. So you mentioned something. You said, that we, and I believe this is true for everybody, um, it's kind of like you briefly mentioned the gap theory, I guess you could say. Like, there's a certain amount of information that we can take in, but at some point, everyone has to step out in faith, and believe something. So I guess, would you say that you believe there is no God, or that you just don't, well, not sure, I guess, because you
Yeah,
said you're okay with not being sure.
the way I describe it, that's a great question. The way I describe it is, if you were to say, I believe Jesus Christ rose from the dead and is God in flesh, I would say, I don't believe that.
Okay,
But
so you
that's,
believe the
but
opposite is true.
no, that's, I can say I don't believe that. But that doesn't mean I'm saying that it can't be true.
Okay, I got you. All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So,
So you could be
so
right, in other words, and I could be
right,
wrong about my belief, but I just don't believe it.
sure.
So I do not say there is no God. I just say I live my life like there's none, and I don't believe there's any.
Okay, so you mentioned, in the Jeff Durbin. I really didn't want to talk about Jeff Durbin, to be honest with you.
Well, you don't have to if you don't want to.
In fact, I really didn't even know what I was getting into coming on here in the first place. I was a little bit nervous, to be honest with you. I'd never done anything like this, but um,
You're doing great.
so
You're doing fine.
I appreciate that. So you said time and again, okay, Jeff, if truth seekers, you kept mentioning truth seekers. So
Yeah.
you're in pursuit of truth.
Yes.
So you do believe that truth can be had. Is that correct?
Yes, but probably not in the way you mean it. I don't desire absolute certainty. I think you almost have to be omniscient to be certain, in that sense, 100% without the possibility of being wrong. I think there's many, or at least some things that we can get very, very close with. But even, dropping this pen, like you mentioned, dropping a pen and gravity working, can we even be certain that when I let go that it's going to fall? Because if your
Well,
God's real, he might do a miracle right now.
that's right.
And it could go up, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, but I think that when I say truth, I mean that we can learn things to such a high degree of confidence that we can say, yes, this is true. But many times in history, we look back, it used to be true that the earth was flat for like 95% of the population, or 99, or maybe even 100, I don't know. But, and we now know, unless you're a flat earther, that the earth is spherical.
What are you talking about?
Please tell me you're not a flat earther.
No.
Okay, good.
No. And you're right, man. Yeah, belief can change, but truth, I don't think ever changes. Again, you can be passionately wrong about what you believe, even though you believe it emphatically and with certainty. And certainty doesn't even mean to me that you have 100% evidence that this thing you're speaking about is absolutely true. In fact, I can't ever point to God in the sky and tell you, look, that's him right there. And with absolute certainty, no faith required, that's God. Now you must believe because you can see it, you can.
So would you say that if you did have 100% certainty that you would not need faith?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, and the Bible says that without faith, it is impossible to please God. For you have to first believe that He is, and that He's a rewarder of those who diligently seek Him. So, the first thing it says, you have to believe that He is. So you have to believe, and of course, I'm sure Hebrews 11. Faith is assurance of the things hoped for, evidence of the things unseen. Well, how do you have evidence of things unseen? Same way we have evidence of gravity. You can't see it. We just see its effects, and throughout life we feel its effects, and so we begin to deduce that gravity exists. And so the same thing can be said of God. Now, you can never show me gravity. You can never show me love. You sure do feel its effects. You're married. You know what I'm talking about, but you can't grasp it. It's an abstract thought. It's
So what do you think is the best way to arrive at truth?
The best way to arrive at truth? Well, for me, and I think you touched on this in your video, is, you talked about, okay, we start at the conclusion and then we give the evidences that point to the conclusion that we started with. But I didn't get to start with that. I started with a very poor understanding of God in the first place. So you could say I started with a fallacy, ended up at truth, and through that truth, I'm able to see the world from a different perspective, a different lens that actually substantiates my truth. It actually enforces my truth.
Okay, but what if, David, what if you didn't end up with truth, but you just think you did?
Sure. Then I guess you could say I'm just passionately going to believe that I still have truth. You probably can change that unless more evidence was presented to persuade me otherwise. And that is the essence of it all. We have evidences. The Bible says that all of creation speaks of God. You've heard the argument, I'm sure, 1,000 times. You don't open a book and think it happened by accident. You see intelligibility behind the book. You know that an author penned the book. You know that somebody had something to do with it. Even if you didn't witness for yourself the author penning the book, you still know that there was a design behind it, creativity behind it. You know that there was a thought behind it, intentionality behind it. There's intelligibility behind it. You would never assume that happened.
David, you have a belief, and you said you ended up with the truth. And there's people who are sincere and passionate who also believe they ended up with the truth, who believe in a God different than yours and sometimes contradictory to yours.
Yeah. So
this is what I meant by being a truth seeker, because Jeff Durbin was saying you start with Jesus is Lord of your life. Mm-hmm. That's in his opinion, and in many other Christians' opinion, that is the foundation. That's the starting point for all Christian apologetics. Jesus Christ is Lord, full stop. So that's what I meant by starting with the conclusion. Now, if you are a truth seeker, if you value this thing called truth, then, in my opinion, you should at least consider the possibility continually that you are wrong. Because if, let's say, you are wrong and you're not willing to consider that possibility, you're in a bad position.
Yeah, you're certainly not in a position to accept truth, even if it slapped you in the face at that point.
Yeah. See, and I consider myself open to the idea, truly, and I even have stated many times for the record what would change my mind, of your God. Mm-hmm. So what would change your mind? What would be a goalpost or a mile marker where you would you have it in your head where if you would see this, you would say, you know what, Doug? I think I was wrong. Maybe my faith was misplaced. Do you have anything that you've thought of that would change your mind? That's
a really hard question to ask, first of all, because faith is so ingrained in identity.
I agree.
It's who you are. So to doubt that even is to kind of doubt who you are in an essence. And I have thought about that question from time to time. What if someone came along and was able to prove God wrong? Would I be willing to accept it? That's almost to me an impossible answer impossible question to answer.
Would you even need proof that your God is not real? Like, wouldn't even just doubt be enough? Like if I told you I had a fire-breathing dragon, mm-hmm. Do I say that word funny to you? Dragon?
Are you from the north?
I'm from Canada, yeah.
Okay, yeah. A little bit.
Like, you could doubt that I have a fire-breathing dragon in my garage right now, but it still could be true. But you could still highly doubt it to the degree where you'd say, I don't believe you, Doug. But sure. It still could be true. So you could basically say, I don't believe Jesus Christ is Lord, that he rose from the dead, but it still could be true. But I need enough evidence to match that type of claim. Mm-hmm. Just like you would need piles of evidence before you would actually sincerely take me seriously that I do indeed, in fact, have a fire-breathing dragon in my garage. You would need to actually even probably fly to my house and be in my garage, and and then you would think I spiked your drink with meth or something, because you probably have seen fire-breathing dragons in your visions.
It's funny you say that. On mushrooms one time, I actually thought I was driving a dragon. It was actually my truck, but I was on some hallucinogens at the time. So yeah, I've been in a dragon.
Yeah. So, like I don't push back on the concept of faith as a lot of other atheists do, but I do think that we should all have these markers of when we know our faith is misplaced. Like I have faith in my wife, but I tell you, I know exactly what it would take for that faith to be broken.
Sure.
But the thing is, there's very few Christians or Muslims that say, well, I know exactly what it would take for my faith in Allah or Yahweh or Jesus to be broken. It's almost like that Jeff Durbin thing again. No, Jesus Christ is Lord, full stop. You don't even consider that possibility that it may not be true.
I guess that's because once you feel that you've arrived at truth, there's no need to feel like there's a pursuit any longer.
Yeah, but all the religions that you say are wrong feel the same way. And don't you wish that they would pursue truth?
Until there's evidence, stacked against them. And that's the thing, like you speak of mountains of evidence. There's mountains of evidence that speak on behalf of Christianity, pro-Christianity. While there is, as with everything, an element of faith required, the evidence is overwhelming, as I'm sure you've done an investigation on yourself, which is why you came to the conclusion maybe that evolution is true. I mean, I don't know what you found that I haven't found that led you to believe that evolution was. You still believe evolution is true? I'm assuming.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't know what you found that led you to believe that evolution is true, because you haven't actually ever seen species jump. I don't think you presuppose a lot the way I presuppose a lot simply in having faith in evolution. You couldn't have been there. You weren't there in the past.
I really don't want to talk about evolution tonight, but if
problem.
If evolution were true, let me just ask this. If you were convinced someday that evolution from species to species, speciation, common descent, if you were convinced someday that actually is true, would that affect your faith at all? Your belief in Jesus?
It would, yeah. But I also know that at this point that I've seen all the evidence pointing against evolution. So I believe evolution to be false. Therefore, I can very easily believe in creationism. So it's not hard for me to believe in creationism, simply because I believe that evolution is false.
Okay, now I do want to talk about evolution. You made a comment that really piqued my interest. You said you've seen all the evidence that show that evolution.
No. Not. Did I say all the evidence?
Or I know. When you say all, I'm not going to. I understand you don't mean all, but
yeah.
But you've seen enough evidence to point to the direction that that evolution is not true.
Right.
But here's my question for you.
Okay.
There are people just like you and me who have jobs, have families, need to make money to put meat and potatoes on the plates. Some of these are geologists, paleontologists, chemists, physicists. It goes on and on and on. When you look at the top tier PhDs with peer-reviewed journal publications, it's 93%, David. 93% of these scientists looked at a lot of evidence just like you did and arrived at a different conclusion. And so when I hear you say that you've seen a lot of evidence and you know that evolution is not true, what have they missed that you didn't?
Well, I mean, the other 7% say that it's not true. So I guess there's evidence on both sides still, regardless of how overwhelming those 93% say. But
would you be a flat earther if 7% of the United States said the Earth was flat?
No, I don't necessarily believe just because the majority believes that. To me, it's just conventionalism. I mean, all the Nazis believe that killing Jews was great, doesn't make it right. And so,
But why did you decide to go with the 7% instead of the 93% on this issue?
Well, obviously, I think my faith has a lot to do with that, because that to me flies in the face of my faith, and so I can't really accept that. Now, I haven't seen all the evidences. I can't, and I do believe in a form of microevolution, of course, but I don't believe in jump species. I don't believe that somehow, some way, and forgive me, this is going to sound very ignorant, but I don't believe that one day a monkey birthed a human. You know, I don't believe that.
Would you consider it as almost as a favor to me to be open to the idea, at least, that you could believe in macroevolution and still be just as a committed Christian as you are today?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. I could hypothetically
Okay,
say
so
that.
that is my goal. If we accomplish one thing here tonight, it would be that, because this is what I hope you at least will look at, and that is that, number one, that you can believe in evolution and still be a committed Christian like you are today. And number two, that there are thousands of great resources that you could go to. If you have a pen, write down BioLogos. This is a Christian website. I'm being honest here. I'm not giving you any atheistic propaganda or anything like that. BioLogos.com, or is it .org?
Let me see.
BIOLOGOS, like biology knowledge. BioLogos. It's either .org or .com.
Oh, yeah, I'll find it.
And
Sure.
yeah, and take a look at that website. And these are committed, devoted, born-again Christians who believe in what people say called macroevolution.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to encourage you just to be open to that possibility, because if it still means you can be a committed Christian, then.
Sure. I mean, it's not a salvific issue to me. Evolution, it doesn't change anything about who I believe the man of Jesus Christ was and what he did on this earth. So, there are things, my pastor worded it well once, there are core issues that we will absolutely die for. There are, core doctrines that we will die for, but there are doctrines that we do have that they are not core to who we are. Like, I won't die for evolution or creationism.
I think what you'll see on this website, though, is that, and this is related to Jeff Durbin, starting with a certain conclusion and then rejecting or accepting evidence based on that conclusion you've already started with. So when I asked you earlier, would this have any effect on your religious faith if evolution were true, and you said, well, yeah, it would. It would, not that it would be totally devastating, but it would have an impact. Mm-hmm. I see that as you not pursuing truth, because what if evolution is true and there's tons of evidence out there that you have selectively put your hands over your eyes over because of this belief?
Sure. No, yeah, I hear what you're saying, man. It would definitely have an impact. I think more than anything, it would cause me to probably go deeper, in my search for, biblically speaking, any clues to something like that. I mean, obviously, the Bible does mention animals and beings that clearly I've never seen and don't exist, Leviathan, Behemoth, things like that. So I don't know what that is, man. And I wasn't there, but so there's even an element of faith that the animal Leviathan existed at some point in time. For me, I'd love to know what that was. If some sort of science could explain that for me, man, that'd be awesome. I definitely don't believe that science and religion are exclusive of one another. I do believe that they coincide way more frequently than people would.
Well, if your God is true and correct and real, then all the evidence of reality should reflect him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because he created it. So there should be nothing to be scared of, no evidence that could disrupt your belief. So yeah, check out that website.
Yeah, I definitely will.
Did you have any other questions for me?
Man, I don't know. I felt like I was going to have a ton of questions for you, but I can't think of any off the top of my head. I probably should have written them down on a piece of paper. But I will say I enjoyed this a lot, and you're an easy guy to talk to. I appreciate your man. It's hard to find anybody on YouTube who you can have a religious talk with and not get volatile.
Yeah.
It's darn near impossible. So it's been cool, man. I almost thought that, to be honest with you, I almost thought you were luring me into some sort of debate where you were going to entrap me in front of all the world, but that's clearly not what happened here. So
No, I'm not that type of guy.
yeah.
Yeah, and I'm glad you showed up too, because sometimes I ask people to come on and they don't show up. So yeah, kudos to you for being here.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed it, and I really I like you. Like it seems you would seem like if I met you in real life, you'd be the type of person I would want to hang out with. And my goal is not to have you abandon your faith. My goal is, like, I think we both share something in common. We both do value truth.
Yeah.
Our beliefs are clearly different, though, and maybe how we arrive at truth is a little different. But I think we have that in common, and who knows? Someday I might be a Christian again. I don't know, but at this point in my life, I don't think I will, because of what I know about the Bible. But that doesn't mean that there isn't a God. There could be a God out there. Part of me kind of wishes there was. I think it's a great concept.
It is. I mean, even if it weren't true, the concept is great. I can't think of how many millions of people, as many as have died, have gone to the other side, comforted by the fact that, something better is awaiting for them on the other side. And I think the biggest thing for me, honestly, having my son and looking at him, and when his cheek is against my cheek, and he stares me deep in my eyes, and that baby stare, golly, it makes me wonder how anyone could not believe in God. It's so perfect. And in fact, I even remember reading Christopher Hitchens. I can't remember which book it was, but he talked about how it was difficult even for him at times to look at the perfect shape of his child's ear and not think there had to be somebody designing this. And of course, we know he held on to his atheism all the way to the end, but it's moving when you see things in this world that strike up some sort of awe-inspiring feeling inside of you, man. My kid does that for me.
And David, I appreciate you saying that, and I want you to know that I still have that, even as an atheist. I have
absolutely.
I have that sense of awe and wonder. And I have 2 kids. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And fortunately, and I hope this never happens to us, but we know or have seen parents who have young kids who these little kids are dying of bone cancer or some other cancer.
Yeah.
And, you gotta, if we're looking at the evidence for God, you have to look at both the good and the bad.
Sure.
And that's another question that we have to look deeply into the eyes of our child and say, what kind of design is this? Cancer in a child? So, that's, I don't want to get into the problem of suffering, but that it is a real problem.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest debates of all time. Sure, I get it. It's led many a Christian astray. In fact, Billy Graham's counterpart there in his early stages of life ended up straying away from his faith simply because of all the suffering in the world. And I get that, man. And you know what? It doesn't drive me away from God. It actually drives me closer to God, because Jesus came and he healed. In the Gospels, he came and he healed. He delivered the sick from their sickness. He delivered the dead from their death. He said, I am the resurrection and the life. In Jesus, there's healing. And then he goes on to say something crazy like, and you will do greater things than I. And I'm not Jeff Durbin. He's a Presbyterian, I think. I don't think he's charismatic. I am charismatic. I do believe that I'm not a cessationist. I do believe that the gifts of God are still available for us today. And so I believe that.
And I appreciate that. Like, if you're going to believe in a God, believe in a God that can actually do something.
Yeah, right. Come on. Amen, man. And that drives me to want to get to that point in my walk with Jesus that, man, I too could lay hands on a child sick with cancer, and he would be delivered from that. I just read one of my wife's Facebook articles 2 days ago. A family that she knew from Hawaii, their child just succumbed to cancer, and I just wept, man. I didn't even know the kid. I just wept because I saw his face and thought, how horrible. But unlike many, I don't blame God for that. I just think, what more can I do to ensure that that doesn't happen for somebody else? And so I guess that's one of my motivating factors in all of this, is that, and that's one thing I actually was, depending on where this conversation was going to go, I was going to bring up, is that, my brother-in-law, the pastor that I told you about last week, and last year he prayed over a girl with cerebral palsy at 3 years old. She'd never walked a day in her life. And what cerebral palsy does to a person as they grow. It constricts their movements. She drug herself around on her arms in excruciating pain because the tendons locked up in her legs. And she couldn't even form words because it affected her speech. And he prayed over her, and today she walks. I've got video of it. She speaks
I
in
love
sentences.
stories like that. I really do. I love stories like that. And I think it would be amazing if these types of miracles were true. And even when I was a Christian, I struggled with this. Well, okay, if these miracles happen, why does it seem like it happens like 2, 3, 7% of the time? Like,
sure,
they're not reproducible. Like, what's going on here, God? Like, why are you healing this little girl of cerebral palsy and not that little girl? And so then I started thinking, well, maybe there's another explanation. Maybe there wasn't a healing, and maybe that's why it's not reproducible. And
yeah. Dude, you're talking to one of the biggest Christian skeptics of all time. I just went to, do you know who Bill Johnson is by any chance?
No.
He's the pastor of a church called Bethel, which is
Pentecostal.
Very Pentecostal, probably one of the world's leading charismatic churches. Really just are just top notch when it comes to supernatural and healing ministries in our world. And I saw him speak actually 2 days ago. He came to our church and visited, and the whole time I'm listening to him and watching him, I'm doubting him. I'm skeptical. I'm like,
did he do the leg growing thing?
Dude.
He did, didn't he?
No, he didn't do that. Okay. But he did. There were other things that I'm like, I'm not sure that's legit. And it's funny because my brother-in-law and I talked about the leg extension thing, where it's like, that's I can do that. I don't want to see a headache went away. Aspirin can do that. I don't want to see a miracle like that. I want to see an arm come out of a nub, man. I want to see something that's going to floor me. And you know what? To this day, other than the cerebral palsy thing, I have never seen anything else. I have prayed for kids with holes in their hearts, and those holes have healed, I believe, in Jesus' name. But I didn't actually witness that happen. So for all I know, it could have just been a natural thing. But the one thing I do know is that little girl is running around every day of her life speaking full sentences because she no longer has cerebral palsy. I mean, it's even documented medically. So I don't know, man, if it wasn't God. I sure don't know what it was. If it's not God, I want to get a hold of whatever it is, because that's awesome, man. And I love children, man, and that's one big thing for me is sick kids, man. It tears me up inside, and I, again, like I said, that's one thing that pushes me deeper into God is I want to do what I can here with this limited time that I have here on earth to bring healing to others if I can.
Oh, do you want me to ask you my tough question that I ask all Christians?
Sure, go ahead.
If you and I are in a car together, we crash, we both die. Mm. And your God is real and true, and I was wrong. And we get up there, and I say, sorry, I was wrong. But God, your God, the God, one and only God in this case, says, you know what, Doug? I like you, and David, I like you too. So I'm going to make you guys a deal. And I'm God, I can do this because I'm the creator of the universe. David, here's the deal. You can give up heaven. Oh, by the way, David, well done, good and faithful servant. You're going to heaven, but here's the deal. And Doug, you didn't accept Jesus. You rejected him, so you're going to hell.
Good try.
But David, if you're willing, if you say yes to this, Doug will not go to hell. But what you have to say yes to is you have to give up heaven.
Mm-hmm.
You're not switching. Doug's not going to heaven. You're not going to hell, David. But you just will both cease to exist. I am God, the creator of the universe. I can just extinguish your souls. Poof. Both of you just cease to exist. So if you say yes, David, Doug is spared an eternity of hell. But you can't go to heaven. Do you take that deal that God's offering?
So by cease to exist, you mean there is no more awareness of you and I? Like we
Correct.
cease altogether.
Yeah.
To save one from the sufferings of hell, the way that the Bible describes it, I think I would say yes, because greater man has no love than this, than to lay down his life for his friends. And so I'd have to say, yeah, man, because hell doesn't sound like fun.
You are only the fourth person to say yes, I think around out of 24.
Yeah. Wow.
I've had 20 Christians look me in the eye and say, no, Doug, I would not do that for you.
Wow. You sure they were Christians, right?
Yeah, I've had pastors say that.
Oh, man. It's a funny hypothetical. Me and my family, we ask each other stuff like that all the time. And, if we're to be consistent with the gospel, then I don't believe there's any other answer than yes.
That's why I love that hypothetical question, because it paints the picture of the gospel. So if the Christian is not willing to say they would do what Jesus did,
yeah,
what kind of Christian are you?
Yeah, it's pretty inconsistent, I think, to say no to that, because we as Christians, above all, should know exactly what hell is described as. Man, I couldn't imagine wanting anyone to have to go through that.
So according to my stats, 16 and two thirds % of Christians who call themselves Christians are actually true Christians, and you're one of them. So congratulations.
And hey, thanks, man. That's pretty consistent with the Bible. I think, they say that the path is narrow and the gate is narrow and few will find it. So, one of the biggest problems I have as a Christian, and, there's many times where I too want to say, I'd rather not go to church. Like your video said, this is why I don't go to churches. The hypocrisy is pretty prevalent.
Hypocrisy never really bothered me that much, because people are people. The church didn't hurt me. That's not why I'm an atheist today. So I totally get that, people make mistakes, and I don't judge a church based upon its members all the time. If the 90% of the members act a certain way, then yeah, you can. But
sure.
I just don't believe it. I really don't think the Bible's God's word, or of a deity's word. I think it's very reasonable to say that some things in the Bible are true, and very reasonable to say some things in the Bible are false. But I understand that for a believer, that is a very uncomfortable statement, because now if what I just said is true, you have the hard task of figuring out what's true and what's false.
Sure. Well, I can imagine some of the parts that you think are false. I've heard a lot of objections to the Bible. People have always, of course, pointed out the fallacies that they think exist in the Bible. And you know what? At the end of the day, I don't always have the answer for that. My only job is to continue my pursuit of what that right answer is, and to continue studying and learning and defending my faith as best as possible, giving what I would deem as an apt answer at an apt time. But yeah, at the end, I believe I'm right, you're wrong, right?
Well, we had a very great civil conversation, so I appreciate you coming on. I don't want to take any more of your time. I know you're a young dad and you have a family waiting at home.
They were praying for me tonight. They didn't know what I was getting into either. So,
well, yeah, tell them, I think you're a great guy, and you did very well. And yeah, it's some of the people I interview, I get frustrated with. I didn't get frustrated with you at all. Even though I disagree with some things you say, of course.
Sure.
Yeah.
We can agree to disagree, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, man, I really enjoyed it too. And, if you ever want to ask some other more difficult questions that you can think of, I'm certainly not objected to getting on here and doing this again with you, man. I did really enjoy it.
I would love, my guess is you've said you value the Bible. So maybe next time we can talk about the Bible.
Sure. Absolutely.
Okay, great. Well, you have a great night.
All right, man. You too.
Take care.
All right.
Oh, do you have Twitter?
I don't have any public social media anything.
How do we keep in touch? Like just on that comment thread? Maybe send me a private message via YouTube. Do you know how to do that?
I think so.
Yeah, try doing that, and then I'll give you my email address. How's that?
Okay, that'll work.
Okay. Have a great night.
All right, man. Bye. Good night.
Eric, this is your last chance if you want to come on. What do you guys think of that? I just hope he goes to that Bio Logo site. Oh, someone's coming on here. Just as I adjusted. Oh, Cousin Leon. We're still live.
I understand that.
What did you think of that interaction?
I got to cut off my YouTube video. Okay. I thought, again, he was one of the more intellectually honest guests you've had. Like when you asked him a difficult question, he didn't immediately go to apologetics. He thought about it. And like you said, you have some sincere disagreements over evolution, but I don't even put that on him. He's in an environment where he is seeing one side of that, right? He's going to, solutionsingenesis.com, whatever. He's not spending years in a science classroom learning that there's piles and piles of evidence for evolution. Great answer to your question, Doug. Would he sacrifice himself for you? And he didn't think long and hard about it. He just came up with the right answer. And so, yeah, like at some level, you need to applaud people for being intellectually honest. And maybe because he is, leave him alone if he needs his religion to stay off drugs. Do you know, and I mean that almost sincerely. Because it was clear from the outset, you're in a pickle. If the religion is keeping him sober, this is a whole new ethical dilemma.
But I asked him that question. I asked him if you walked into this belief system, you got off drugs. If you walked out of the belief system, would you get back on drugs? And he said no.
Yes, and I also enjoyed his answer to the outsider test of faith. And he very immediately said, of course, other religions can help people. Like, I've heard you ask that same question to many other people who then kind of get slippery and almost use the, yes, but that was the devil working through that religion. And they get into their own, I guess, propaganda, for lack of a better word. They get into their own propaganda of there is only one true God. Only Christians can get off drugs because of God. Everybody else who's getting off drugs because of their God, it's false gods and that's demonic and all that other stuff. So again, I really appreciated just how sincere and honest and upfront he was without he did not immediately go to dime store apologetics. Like, you know what I mean? But I don't mean to be derogatory. There should be a better word for level. Chet's watching. I got to be careful. I can't use level 1 or level 2 because Chet's watching. But to not go to very simple, basic apologetics, this guy actually thought about it and thought about the answers.
I love that I shattered his expectations of me, that he thought I would try to entrap him and debate him. And
well, there was a bit of false advertising. You made the lead up as if this guy was coming on camera to school you.
Yeah, if you read the YouTube comments, it kind of was like that.
So we all gathered what we would call the double diamonds, ready to watch the fight, and then there was no fight.
Yeah, but this is how YouTube.
Doug, comment section, fake news, so sad, promise to fight.
But this is normal. Like, people are different people in text versus face to face. Like Olsbejak right now is talking pretty
Trash, smack.
Talking smack in the comment section of this YouTube video. If he was here right now showing his face, my guess is there'd be a little bit of a difference in tone.
Correct, because I think if Chet were to grow a pair and come on camera right now, there would be a difference in my tone, and it would be more anger. By the way, just for the viewing audience, when Doug goes off and starts to get boring, the rest of us have to amuse ourselves because we've heard all of it over and over and over. So we get a little cheeky with each other.
Yeah. Eric, last chance if you want to come on.
I will go off camera too. Maybe if the fact that I'm on camera is dissuading, because I do have to go. I just came on to say hello to all my fans, to say, Doug, good job. And I want to applaud the fact that after watching Doug many times, there was some surprises in this conversation. Not in what Doug was doing, because Doug always does a good job. Again, you asked some nice, simple questions, like good questions that got the guest thinking a little bit. But the guest was like honest. And I've talked to Doug off camera many times about, when are you going to talk to somebody who's just honest and not immediately apologetic, immediately just going to the propaganda, immediately going to the sound bites or the talking points? And this person, who I apologize for forgetting his name, or maybe he didn't say his name. David, we'll keep first names. He was just a good guy. You could see exactly why he believed. But he wasn't saying, oh, evolution is absolutely completely wrong. I'm never, ever, ever going to change my mind. You could tell, somebody had shown him all of the evidence against evolution. That's all he's really seen. Therefore, he hasn't looked into it. And was honest about that.
I tell you, I'll be as happy as I can be if, let's say, 5 years from now, I talk to David again. He says, you know what, Doug? Tonight was the night where I started looking into evolution, and I do believe in evolution via common descent now. I'm still a Christian, and that's fine. But to me, this evening would have been a success, because I do believe it's a scientific fact. It's almost, I put in the same level.
It's as fact as you could say.
Yeah.
The word fact applies to evolution as much as gravity, as much as stars, as much as everything.
Yeah. So, yeah, that'd be great if he just moved just an inch or two, a little bit towards that. I'd be a happy camper.
All right, I'm going to bid all your fans good night, and maybe the lack of my presence.
Actually, stay here for a second. I'm just going to close the live stream, and then we can talk, decompress. Thank you to everyone on the chat who showed up and watched. And I'm going to try every Tuesday. Last Tuesday
I just want to say a special goodbye to Chet, who knows where he can kiss me.
Okay, so we're going to try Tuesday around this time as a regular thing. Last Tuesday I was
Doug
sick,
can't say goodbye. Doug's not good at goodbyes. I had a good out. We had a nice fade to black there, and he ruined it.
Okay.
Chet knows where he can kiss me.